Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting of Thursday, August 17th, 2023. It's approximately 9:10 a.m. And of course, this is the Board of Directors of HART. I'll begin first by calling roll. I'm getting us echo. Anybody else getting an echo? Is there a reason why? It's okay. Anyway, okay, I'm going to take roll. Kika Bukowski. Anthony Alto, I think you're here.
Yeah.
Anthony? Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
How's London?
I'm actually in Spain now.
Oh, you're in Spain. See, our intelligence here isn't very good. Michelle
I
Chun,
was
good
in
grabber. Edwin Young,
Here.
Natalie Wassa. I see
Here.
Natalie. Here. Roger Morton.
Here.
Joe O'Donnell is excused. Ed Sniffen is coming late, but for now he's excused. Don Takutiapuna is also excused. Arthur Tolentino,
Present.
Robert Yu,
I'm here.
and the chair is here. I think that's everyone. Thank you. And we do have quorum, both the quorum to vote as well as quorum to convene this meeting. Now, with that, let's go, before we start agenda item number 2, which is the executive director's update. Let me ask if there's anyone here who wishes to testify on any agenda item. Anyone here? No? Cindy says no as to anything that was submitted. So with that, we'll begin. Laurie?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, board members. So just to give an update on the full funding grant agreement update. So on the federal process, the package has been submitted to DOI and we have passed the 45 days, but technically they have 60 days. So that ends next week, Tuesday, August 22nd. Once the DOI time passes, FTA will finalize the reevaluation package, and hopefully this will be done by the first week of September. That's on the federal side. On the state side, we worked very closely with Governor's office, and they're very pleased with the package that was submitted. Governor did concur that a supplemental is not required. And on August 8th, the environmental publication was posted. September 7th is the end of the comment period. So that all wraps up into the full funding grant agreement amendment. And we would like to present to the board early September and obtain board approval mid-September. We are trying to get a draft from FTA via CORE. So at least we can at least give it to the PIG members to start to review. But right now, HART does not have control of that document. It's FTA. We would like to present to City Council EMLA Committee September 17th and full council October 4th, and then submit the package to FTA on October 6th. However, we are getting mixed messages from FTA and FTA legal through CORE that there may be a switch in the schedule. So who has to review before FTA can give it to us. So we will keep you posted as we find out from FTA and FTA legal. Tied to the amendment, as you folks know, the first tranche release is of the $125 million is when the amendment is done. However, and I know, Chair, I'm sorry, I'm jumping. We can cover it again. The lapsing of the $744 million is September, end of September. So I did receive a letter from FTA 2 days ago stating that they're waiting to see what Congress will do, because in the past they have extended the time, but they're watching closely. They're saying nothing needs to be done right now, but FTA administrator does have the authority to extend, and they will take the appropriate action at that time. So they have assured me that they will, but that's
How many times can the FDA administrator extend? Because this is not just the first extension.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, but they have assured me that she has that authority.
Okay. Are you done with
Yes,
A?
yes, Chair.
Members, any questions on agenda item 2A, which is the full funding grant agreement? Roger? Roger, your thingy, not your
I'm
phone.
sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but when you said DOI,
Department of Interior, sorry.
Department of Interior,
Yes,
okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Anyone else?
No.
Yes.
Just a comment, based on our previous experience with CORE, they only review for form and legality. So you may want to clarify what they're doing with the amended changes.
Yeah, so core is they're done with their comments. We were instructed by FTA to have our core reach out to FTA legal just to get a copy of it, so that at least we we're under a tight deadline. We understand, Chair, like what we went through with the recovery plan. We don't want to just dump it on you and then, okay, hurry up, approve. So like, give us the draft so we can at least get it to the pig. But they don't want to release it because they don't want it to be a public document. I said, yeah, but the pig can keep it confidential. So that's what we're having court, just to do the legal conversation with FTA legal. But they're done. They're done with to your point.
Anyone else? Michelle, do you have a comment? Your mic is on. Oh, yes,
Keeps
Roger.
coming on.
One other question on, I'm gratified to hear the governor signed off. That's really helpful. Is that include the 6E process of the historic preservation for state?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chair,
So-
Anthony here.
Oh, Anthony, okay. Go
Just
ahead.
Before I left, I happened to talk to a member of the governor's team, and they told me how incredibly impressed they were. That they said it looked more like a full-blown environmental assessment. I believe it was over 850 pages. They said, we didn't do you guys any favor. You knocked the ball out of the park. So I just thought I'd make a note of that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Natalie, do
yes.
you have any questions?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify the dates a little bit more, Lori. So you stated that the board would approve it mid-September, is that correct?
Yes, Natalie.
And so what date would that be?
Well, we're trying to go by the board meeting, but we may need to ask for a special meeting if it's, I want to say September 15th.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking, because if the EMLA committee from the council is going to be reviewing it September 17th,
Correct.
just a couple days, that's not really fair to the public. So
Sure. Okay.
yeah, just making note of that. Thank you.
Okay, Edwin?
Having retired from the federal government, I've learned that their urgency is not your urgency and your urgency is not theirs. So what frequently works is to give them a drop dead date and a drop dead date, a deadline to respond or to provide inputs with
FDA or Department of Interior?
for both
Oh, yeah.
or FDA.
Department of Interior, my understanding, it's not us. It's in statutes that they have 45 days to make comment, or it's extended to 60 days. And then I think after the 60 days, it's done. So correct. So that's why we're waiting for next week, Tuesday. You're correct.
Any other comments? Do you have something, Roger?
Yeah, I just hope that it can be resolved by the end of this federal fiscal year, September 30th. That usually is the urgency, at least on the Federal Transit Administration. They have a lot of things that they want to close before they begin a new fiscal year. This would probably be a big one.
Anyone else? Lori, I have a question. So the governor has agreed that there is no need for a SEIS, a supplemental EIS. But is he issuing a FONSI or anything like that? Has he taken that position? Vance?
We received a concurrence letter from the governor's office.
A what letter?
A concurrence letter.
Has he made a decision though as to whether or not anything is necessary? I mean, is he issuing, basically, I'm concerned as to whether he's going to issue a FONSI at the end. And this goes back to Super Ferry. Wonderful case that I did. So I want to know whether you're going to have a FONSI, because the problem with the Governor Lingo was she did nothing. And so because of that, the Supreme Court said you can't do nothing. There are various levels of this. So have you heard, are they gonna, after the comment period, I mean, what is it that's out there for comment? Is it like there's no finding of significant impact? I mean, what is it?
So what's out there currently is in the environmental review program public notice, the determination is published in that. And the concurrence letter is included in that no supplemental EIS is required.
Okay. And that's the decision of both the governor and I assume OEQC concurs, and that's the reason why it's in there. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If not, thank you very much. We're going to executive director. Oh, by the way, anyone else here to testify now that we've gone to 2A? Anyone else? Nope, nothing from, I don't see any movement from Cindy. So we're going to 2B, Rail Operations Center Tour with Japan Council General. Anyone here to testify on that item? Not, please proceed.
First of all, thank you, Chair, for letting us, myself and Anthony, attend that. And Roger, it was quite, to me, an eye opener for the Japanese consulate. They did have their media with there, and I believe also the president of ANA Airlines was there. So Hitachi took them on a tour of the Rail Operations Center. That's the brains where they could see all of the trains being controlled right there at that center, all of the video screens up. And then they took them into the warehouse where they had some trains up on the tracks. So they got to observe that. And Patrick Pricer from DTS helped to give that tour. So I asked Anthony, I said, is this your first time being out here? And he said, yes. And, I'll let him speak. But I know we've offered in the past to board members to go out there. But, if you folks want to go out there, I really think you should, especially new ones, should take that opportunity. And I'm sure Roger will grant that tour, and we'll be part of it. But that's really up to Roger.
You're talking about the Rock, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Roger or Anthony, if you wanted to add.
We'd be happy to facilitate any board member that wants to go for a tour of Rock. If there's enough, we'll even have a date that we could set where we could have several. But we do try to, be gentle with Hitachi, that we don't overwhelm them with tour requests. But for the board, I think it's important that board members actually see the facility. Happy to arrange that.
Let me be clear, if this is something that's specific for the board, so our numbers, 2 at a time?
Oh.
Because it's not something that was, the difference between this and the opening was general public.
Mhm.
So there wasn't a problem necessarily there, but this is different because you've extended it specifically to the board. So we're gonna have,
people from party to join us. We have board members.
no,
You have to have the public.
no. They can go as many, they can have as many join. It's the number from here. I don't need to go Icon.
We could facilitate 2 at a time. It would not be an issue. I might not go on all the tours if it was 2
You
at a
can't
time.
go because you're gonna count.
I would count, right? So, but we have
This is
staff
our
that
problem,
can.
so
We have
don't
staff
go.
that can arrange to tour people there.
And Ed can't go too at the same time because Ed counts too.
Yeah.
I'll go the next year.
No, the two of you can go together. Okay, just so that we're clear on that. But thank you very much for the invitation. If you haven't seen The Rock, please go see The Rock. And for those of you who have young kids, make sure they take you what I call the Xbox generation place. Because everything is run with like Xbox to me. It's all screens. Go see that. And then you have a newfound respect for the future of an industry in Hawaii. Okay, anyone else on the, Anthony, do you have anything to say?
Not particularly. I mean, just to concur with what Roger said, I do think people should go visit it. And what was very impressive, of course, is their ability to keep a highly accurate account on how
Anthony, can you
efficient they
somehow
are.
raise your volume, either go closer to your mic or something?
Can you hear me now?
Better.
No, I was just saying I was concurring with Roger. I think everybody should visit it. And what I found most impressive is that they were able to give us real-time statistics on how efficiently the system is operating, and it's operating at 99.5% efficiency, which is pretty extraordinary.
Anyone, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, I guess we will move on to the next agenda item. I do want to say I was in Japan towards the last week of July, and I rode the Shinkansen from Kyoto to Hiroshima and Hiroshima to Tokyo. That's an extremely impressive system, very impressive system. And they have the 2-gate system, you know, but what the people there are very well trained on. I don't know if it's training or it's just the way they are. They unload and offload in less than a minute. And they clean in less than a minute. It's amazing. And I don't know whether it's because people don't leave their trash or whatever, but at the end of the line, they come in and they clean in less than a minute.
We, most of our dwell times are 20 seconds at a station. And of course we don't have the same load that they have, and trains are cleaned at every terminal station. Dwell time at the terminal stations are 2 to 3 minutes. A cleaning crew does come in and does clean the entire train within a 2 to 3 minute period.
Shinkansen is less than a minute. Just to give you something to work towards, right?
Yeah, and part of that is because we, with the 10-minute headway, that's a 50-minute with 5 trains. 50 minutes divided by 5 is 10. So that just gives us a little bit of extra time at the end. I mean, we have about 5 minutes or so on both ends, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And so we just, they could probably do it less, but that's how much time they have.
Thank you, Roger. Anyone else on 2B? No? Thank you very much. Members and the public, we're going to move to agenda item number 3, which is the committee reports. And first of all, let me ask generally, anyone here in the audience who wishes to testify on committee reports, and I want to hear from you if you want to do A, which is Finance Committee, or B, Oversight Committee. So I'm not going to announce this again. Okay. Cindy, anyone? Okay, we have nothing. So let's begin with A, which is the August 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Finance Committee. Robert Yu.
Thank you, Chair. Your Committee on Finance met on Thursday, August 3rd. We don't have any action items that we need to bring to the board today. We looked at the monthly and annual cash inflow and outflow statements, and also we discuss the timing of the fiscal year 25 operating and capital budget. We did defer one of the items with respect to reallocation and potential additions to the fiscal year 2024 budget to the next to the next committee meeting, Chair. And that's it for my report.
Members, any of you have any questions or comments on agenda item number 3A and Robert Yu's report? Anyone? No? Kika? No? Okay, I just want to make an announcement. This is just for the public's information. That I'm contemplating the creation of a pig for the budget. It seems like we're deferring a lot of items, and it seems like we have a lot of questions because we're looking at the structure of the budget. And as you will see when we go into the rules, there's going to be, and when you review the rules, there's a whole bunch of new information on the budget at that time. So I'm just putting it out there that that's one of the things that I am contemplating doing so that everyone kind of knows. And I think that's a function of that when the Finance Committee is meeting, we're having I think, some difficulty in getting our hands around it. So Robert, I think you'll be in concurrence on that. Anyone else? Not, let's move to committee report number B, which is the August 3, 2023 meeting of the Project Oversight Committee. So I have both Kika and Michelle, and I asked for comments before, I didn't see any, but in case anybody missed it, I don't see any comments, so please, Kika and Michelle, I don't know how do we wanna break this up. But
Chair, can I defer to Vice Chair Michelle Greengrauber? I was not in attendance at the POC meeting, the last POC.
Okay, Michelle?
Hey, Chair, your POC committee met on August 3rd and reviewed the project report. I think the PMOC report was like delayed, but there were no actions, there were no changes, no approvals, but post the meeting, I think I wanted to let all the board members that Kika suggested that each board member meet with Nate Netting and go over in detail how the monthly progress report is structured, so that if you have any questions on, how to read it or what's in it, that you'll be able to review it either prior to the committee meetings or prior to the board meeting. So I wanted to kind of just put that one out there, that it will probably be trying to contact the board members. But we also talked about that in the monthly progress report, how some of the reporting items were historical, right? They were either from Glenn or somebody else, and at a later date, potentially review them. He hasn't made any significant changes. Review them valid or not.
Any members, any questions or comments on that report? Anyone? No. So let me and I think this is what we discussed when we were in the POC meeting. My understanding from Nate, and Nate, I see Nate there, but you can just nod or say whatever. There's only 25% of that report is something, I remember the figure 25% of that report is really something that people, or even I think the question, let me back up. I think the question was, of our monthly progress report, which is done because of the FTA, how much of that is really required by the FTA? And I think your response was only 25%. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to come up. You might want to come up. So I remember that specifically when we were having this discussion, because the overall comment was, we do this monthly progress report because of the FTA. And of course, the question is, well, how much of this does the FDA really want? And the answer was 25%. So we have this voluminous thing over time, which, because of the fact that we think the FDA wants it, but the FDA only wants about 25% of it. So that was one comment. My comment, I think, was, we have come down this road how many times? People have said we should have a streamlined version. And I think there was a time when both Michelle and Natalie worked on a streamlined version. There was also a comment about, and I think this is by Edwin, and if Edwin disagrees, he can speak up. Edwin said, why don't you do like a summary and put the progress report on the back as an appendix, but at least we have a summary of 13 or 15 highlighted points, and then if we want more detail, we can go in the back. I see these are the various discussions that we had. I remember, I think when Michelle and Natalie worked on it, it was a matter of, okay, shouldn't we be able to get this down to 12 pages? For some reason, 12 pages sticks in my mind. And shouldn't we be able to get it like that? So I guess now that we're back to square one, the issue is, how do you think, because I just heard the request about, maybe you should meet with every single person. I think that comes from you, Kika. Every single board member as to what they want to see in the monthly progress report. And so can you tell me what's in your mind about how we're going to meet, or what is it you want to know from the board members, so the board members can be at least briefed and prepared for this meeting with you? Not that I don't want to meet with you, but I think we've had so many years of extensions on what I want, yeah.
Sorry, just before, if I could, before Nate answers that, if I could just clarify what I had suggested. What I had suggested for the board members to do voluntarily is if I had suggested that the board members contact Nate if they wanted to review the current monthly report to understand it better and maybe have Nate explain what information is where and what's located where and what questions they might have regarding the current monthly report. So it wasn't so much to provide input on what they would like to see the monthly report look like as much as it would be to understand what the monthly report currently provides.
Okay.
Aloha, Nate Meddings, Heart Project Director. What Kika said is exactly that. I wanted to give the opportunity to meet with each of you guys and just go through the progress report, talk about the data that's within it, and then also maybe even the origin of some of the dashboards and reports that are within it, and then understand what information that we think is missing and how I can add, streamline, cut, or reformat that report to find a useful way to convey that information. I think just a page turn where I can spend some time and walk through each page might be helpful. There's also a lot of redundant data in there, and if it's not serving its purpose, happy to cut it out and try to find a different format.
Well, Nate, isn't the problem because you're trying to deal with the board, but in essence, as you said earlier, that monthly progress report is a function of the FTA. So shouldn't we all have an understanding of what, in other words, what is no cut? In other words, this is FTA wants it, and even if you guys don't like it, tough, it's going to be in there. So shouldn't the board first have an understanding as to what is what I would call no cut, that whether we like that graph or we don't like it, it's irrelevant because FTA wants it. And I guess we all have to agree at some point that the monthly progress report is a document created for the FTA, and we, the board, are getting a courtesy copy of it, sort of. But if FTA only needs 1/4 of what you're giving us, then should we look at what it is that the FTA wants? And if we don't want all the other stuff, then maybe our report will cut by to 1/4. Or if we want to have all this information, then we want to have all this information. But I think your point and Kika's point is that until we understand what's in there, how can we decide whether we want it or not? And there's the possibility that people don't care. And that's their right too. We just want to read the executive summary and that's it. But that's their right too, So anyway. Yes, Kika.
And I do want to clarify, and I'll defer to your direction, but what I want to clarify is whether or not the progress report that we review in the POC committee is under the purview of the POC committee. So just to prevent individuals from approaching the administration to make this tweak and that tweak, I just want to clarify whether or not any changes, if they're decided to be made, would be made through the POC committee, or would it be made through the board, or would it be made through a PIG? I would prefer, because it is a report of the POC, that it be made in the POC committee, if any, and discussed in the POC committee.
Okay, understood. Edward.
Just an additional comment to what the Chair has said. There are certain requirements that are required by FTA and Department of Interior. Those cannot be changed. But for our edification, I think what would be useful is for the POC to select certain performance measures that we can evaluate the progress of the project. The performance measures can be selected as required by FTA, or it could reflect the desires of the individual board members, because everyone has a different set of needs regarding the information they're looking at. So if you were to pick, say, 12 performance measures that tell us how we're progressing against that. I think that'd be more useful for us.
Any other comments by members? Michelle, do you have any comment? Further comment?
No, I don't have any comment. I mean, I think these are all really good points. I mean, I think that I'll be personal about it, and I know what's in the monthly report. I kind of flipped through it to see certain changes. There's some things that, I mean, it's kind of dealer's choice that I would prefer a different metric or something else. Some things are easier to find than others. I think in general, it's a little long. It's difficult to go through. Some of the information's in different places. And we could probably work on tightening it up a little bit. But in the same respect, it's really, really difficult to get everybody to agree. That's the biggest problem, right? Nate will do whatever we want. So the question is, what do we want, right? And what does the POC need to be able to meet its committee responsibilities? And so, in some ways I defer to the chair about that. In other things, I think that Edwin's right. I think there are some metrics that we'd like to understand better that HART uses internally to measure the project, and that aren't always visible to us, and that they use in project controls to measure the project, and maybe we can learn to use those, right? There's some that I've used before. I talk about earned value a lot, but I'm totally willing to learn how the transit project controls works and what works for them and what's worked for other projects. So, you'll see later, we talk about kind of an executive kind of quad chart. When we had a short discussion about that, Nate showed us, Kika and I, kind of a summary chart that he had used for a different transit authority. And I think that I think we should be open to those kinds of things and open to learning, while at the same time you want it to be simple enough that everybody can understand it, right? So my comment is, I think it's a little bit too long. I think it's kind of hard to get everybody to agree, but I think it's really worth the time to do it, because we're in a time now where we have an opportunity to kind of like jiggle everything around, understand what we're really doing, and then next year when we start really digging into CCGS, we'll be able to apply these to the major segment that we're working on. So I think it's time well worth being spent.
Any other comments? Yes, Ed.
Okay. I like the summary of that elephant summary, and I like data. So I'd love to see if there's a summary that I can just dig into the data as I need after that. Definitely, if there's data being provided by HART that nobody needs, that's extra effort for them, definitely should be gone. But from that perspective, if it's not extra work, I like the data. Just that extra summary would be really good. Thanks.
Kika?
Yeah, so I take all you guys' comments and input, and I appreciate it. So, I'll try to sit down with Nate and talk about how we can possibly create something, maybe a little bit more comprehensive summary page. But I like the detail. A lot of it is appendices and attachments and exhibits. And if you choose to read past the summary page, that's your call. If you don't, then that's your prerogative as well. But I'll try to see if I can, Nate, if you don't mind, work with you and see if we can come up with something and present it, maybe in the next POC, and see what we all think about it and go from there.
I'm just kind of nodding because I was thinking, God, we heard this before. Sorry. I mean, nothing against you, but we have gone through this so many times. And I really do believe critical to all of this is what is it that the FTA wants? What is it that's extra? And if the board wants the extra, fine. But if we are reading a report that is only 1/4 relevant at this, especially at this stage of the game, then let the board know, because the board's got, I mean, everyone has their different time constraints, and I would hate to see people trying to read through things that's just not even relevant to the FTA for whom the report was created. The other thing that, something that Kika mentioned is whether, the information is, or the whole transaction and the discussion goes through the POC first, or if people are prohibited from, not necessarily prohibited, but not encouraged to go directly to the various staff members. The only reason why that sends sort of a thing for me is because I am probably the worst offender, and that I will go and it's not in my chair capacity, it's the capacity as a board member. I was like this before you even came on board. So it's a matter of, if I, as a board member, I have a question, I don't think I should be prohibited from asking my question. And if I want an answer from you, or you can't give it to me, then you refer me to somebody else. If it gets to the point that it's absolutely unruly, then we have to do something. But if it's not to that point, I don't want to discourage board members from asking the question and getting a straight answer. I don't like jumping to the hoops. I really don't like that, because the board members, and I hate picking on them all the time, but I do pick on them. With the exception of Ed and Roger, everyone else here is a volunteer, and we all have different time constraints. We're at different stages in where we are, but a lot of us still work. And so, to have to wait for things is very difficult. And I think I've said this very unceremoniously to some of you, is that, you guys work for us. We don't work for you guys. So if we need stuff as a board, we need stuff as a board, or we need stuff as individuals to make decisions as board members. But we are not here for your convenience, with all due respect. You guys are here for us, especially with the exception of Roger and Ed, right? I mean, especially for those of us who are serving and are volunteers. Even Kika's a volunteer. So the reason I pick on them is, as you know, they're ex officio. They sit by the nature of their positions. So that's one of the things that I am going to be, Kika, very guarded about, is the fact that I'm going to guard, because I don't want any kind of constraint on the board members. Yes, Kika.
So just to clarify, I'm not suggesting, and I apologize if I'm not stating myself clearly, but I'm not suggesting that to restrict or prevent any individual board member from approaching Hart staff and whatnot to request information. But when it starts to potentially impact standing reports that are reported through various committees, for example, the finance report, or financial report, or the long-term financial plan, if it starts to impact the way those reports are drafted or reported, then I think it should go through the committee process. But on a one-off basis, of course, I mean, I think every member has the ability to go directly to the staff. That's kind of what I was getting at.
And just so that we're clear, right? The ultimate say on what, if we decide to change a format, or it's a format that needs to be addressed, it comes before this board. So it's a policy that we're going to make or we're not going to make. So it's the final say is before this board. So I agree. Committee should take the first pass, make a recommendation to the board, but it's the board as a body that's going to make that final decision. I think we're on the same page, Kiko.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, anyone else? How about Edwin?
If it will help, when we're in Washington, D.C., we tended to give a lot of information, and we're forewarned when you're briefing a cabinet official or top-level department executive, you got 5 minutes, 1 page preferred, no more than 2 pages. If you can whittle down your reports for the board to those short 1 or 2 pages, I think that would suffice.
And what Edwin is saying is absolutely correct. You know, I've read so many CRS reports, they're the congressional research, and then, you know, it's like that there's always a 1 to 2 page max summary in the front, and then the report follows that. And then it's, if you want to read it, fine. If you don't, because we get them all the time, it's like that's the way it goes. But anyway, Anthony or Natalie, any comments? I can only see you guys out of the corner of my eye. Sorry. So if you're waving or something, say something because I can hear you better. Anyone?
Sure.
Yes.
I just want to say
Art.
that, you know, hearing the other board members and certain parts of the report may be important to some of the members and not the others, but it's how each board member chews up information. So I'm just suggesting that they might, if there's a legend that signifies by delta that this area of the report is mandatory by the FTA, and the other areas of the reports are either in detail for the board and other members of the board that would be I think easier to read for those that don't want to read all the other stuff that's not mandatory. So we can break up the report so that it can satisfy the board members.
Nate, before you go, let Kika.
Yeah.
You're done, right, Art?
Yes.
Kipa, okay.
And just something to keep in mind, I mean, you know, when we talk about what is required by the FTA, at some point, you know, because of the truncated project, that point may not necessarily apply. So, you know, it's really what information this board for the monthly report wants to see in the monthly report.
Yes, Art.
So I'll volunteer to do some lay work. I'll go through the governing procedure from the FTA that governs the requirements in a progress report. I'll highlight those. Then I'll also go through the monthly progress report and highlight the areas that I know are useful to FTA PMOC, and that'll be a good starting point for these conversations.
You came up with 25%, so you must have some idea.
Yeah, we went through probably about 2 years ago with the PMOC and tried to streamline the report as much as possible. So I have a good idea of what they use, and so I can get a good starting point for that.
Okay.
Just one
Yes,
last
Ed.
comment. The funding agreement calls for DBE and all these other boilerplates. We don't need those unless someone else specifically needs them. You can move a lot of that information into the appendix because it's of secondary importance to us.
Anyone else? Anthony, Natalie?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so with that, and I assume we don't have any late requests, no one here to testify. So thank you very much. So members, we have a plan on committee reports. And now we're gonna do agenda item number 4, which is the further performance review of HART Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer. And there is a potential vote to call this into executive session. Now, let me explain why agenda item number 4 and 5 were put on this agenda. It was on last month's agenda, and I think there may have been some misunderstanding among certain board members as to why it was on here. No one called me on it. I wish if you had a problem, you should have called me. But in any event, let me explain what happened. These 2 agenda items are not here as a result of Michelle's committee or anything else. These agenda items are here upon a request of a board member who wanted to know 2 things. And they both relate to you, Laurie. First was, where did you come up with the C- that you said that we gave you and none of us graded you? And if you were to grade on a 1 to 5 basis, we find it difficult because to many of us, you average between 3.2 and 3.5, which is far from a C-, unless you're on a different grading scale. And then the other one was the protocol for public statement, legislative initiatives, as you know, in our rules and in our policy statement, only this board makes those kinds of decisions. So you were, of course, quoted to say that you were going to go in for a GET increase. And I don't know whether you were quoted out of context or whatever, but I will tell you, those of us, I think, who have very strong ties with the legislature, our phones went nuts because they said, what is the matter with you guys? I mean, you know, what do you mean you're going to come in? So why is your board authorizing the executive director to say she's going to come in and ask for a GET increase? So that's the genesis of these two items. I don't know. It is the arguably the fourth agenda item number 4 may be subject to the sunshine exception. I don't know. I'm asking you. Agenda item number 4 is really the C- statement that Laurie made. So whether that's something that we have to go into executive session to discuss.
So personnel matters may be discussed in executive session. It's up to Lori. She can waive that
Okay.
and have that open if she would like.
Okay, and number 5, I do not believe is a matter of executive session. Number 5 is the statement that we're going to go in for GET increase.
Again, if you're getting into personnel matters, it can be an executive session, up to Lori as to whether to waive.
Okay, so those are the 2 items. So before we go any further, I'm going to ask, is there anyone here publicly to testify on agenda item number 4, which is the further performance review of the HART Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, which I explained is the whole issue of the statement regarding C-, which was really taken against the board. It wasn't, I don't think the public or people who commented on it thought it was anything necessarily about something Laurie said, as much as they assumed that it was something that this board did, which this board didn't do. And number 5, the protocol for public statement on legislative initiatives, and this is your statement, Laurie, that you were going to go in for a GET increase, may or may not have been taken out of context. I don't know. I just saw that as well. So someone in the board asked that these 2 items be put on the agenda so we could have an explanation on that. So any members in the public to testify on these 2 items? Seeing none. Anyone publicly? Seeing none. So, okay, so whether we go into executive session or not is up to you, Laurie, because these are potentially personnel matters. So they do that. So the discretion on waiving executive session is yours, not ours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for clarifying that. I don't need to go into executive session, especially since this was so public, both items. So I think it's fair that I explain, give an explanation in the public. So my apologies to all of you, the board. You're right. The board did not say C-. How that came about was when you look at the scores, to your point, Chair, 3.5, 3.79, 3.2, 3.7. When you divide that by 5, sorry, I'm an engineer through and through, so you just do the basic math. It's not graded on a scale of 4, like the whether you're in school, grade school, intermediate, college, it's always a 4.0 scale. This is 5. 5 is the maximum. So just straight math. 3.5 divided by 5 is 70.5. 3.79 divided by 5 is 75.9. 3.2 is 64.8. And 3.7 is 74.3. You divide all of that divided by 4, so it's a 71.4. So you're right. I made the leap from 71.4 to C-, and my apologies to the board. You folks didn't do that.
Laurie,
I did that.
3.5 is the average score, right? So if I look at it as 3.5, and I'm assuming there that, you know, you're almost assessing, and because you're converting it to a grade scale,
Yes.
it's like 1 is an F. And that's not necessarily true when you look at exactly the description of it. But more importantly than that, you got an average score of 3.5 through whatever it was. So if you're going to look at 5, just taking an average, that's solidly in the middle, and more than, to me, a C- would be something 2.9 or 2.8 if you're going to grade on that. But that's the explanation, because it looked like one, we graded you, and as far as I know, unless someone privately told you on the side, which I don't know about, nobody graded, because that wasn't it. We were asked to do a scale. And people, like I said, 3.5 is what they graded, or the average that you got. So I don't find that as a C minus
I
necessarily.
appreciate that, Chair. I really do. So my mistake in doing that interpretation was purely math. That's all it was. 3.5.
Yeah, but I don't even agree with your math. Yeah, I just don't see when, to me, when you go 1 to 5 and 3.5 is above average. If 3 is average and 1.5 is 3, so it's your conversion from taking that number and then dividing it by 4 to put it onto a grade scale,
If I
which is
divided
what
by
you
4, it would be in the 80s. So it was divided by 5. So
But you did, in your explanation, say then you divided it by 4. You've divided
no.
70 something by 4.
Each one is divided by 5. So it's 3.5, 3.7, 3.2, 3.7. It's graded on a 5.
So let me ask
Yeah.
you a simpler question.
Yes.
If you felt that this board gave you a C minus, why didn't you come before this board and ask us if we gave you a C minus? Instead of going public with saying, we gave you a C minus, and then you put this board who honestly did an assessment at the point of trying to explain why did we give her us, we didn't give you a C minus. For I would say if you polled the board, most of them would say we gave you above average. We may not have given you an A plus, but we didn't give you a C minus or a D, which is close to me, C minus is closer to D plus than it is to anything else. So if you were that concerned about it, why didn't you come to us and ask us? As opposed to saying, oh, this board went and gave me a C minus. And it's not what also bothered me, Laurie. And I found out after the fact that somehow this got among different people, and different people were supposed to come to this board when this was first on the agenda and take, well, it wasn't us, I think it was me, to task on this. I don't know where it came from, but I do know that this is something that occurred, and it didn't have to occur. Because one, this board never graded you. We didn't ask, or the Human Resources Committee didn't ask us to give you an A, B, C, D, or F. They didn't ask us that. They said, okay, this is a scale, and you converted it.
I admitted to that already, Chair, and I did apologize for that. And I wasn't given an opportunity to talk about this until I met with the chair 2 weeks ago on this. Nobody discussed my evaluation with me until 2 weeks ago. The timing of this, it was unfortunate. The media was asking for this. And so like you said, I shouldn't have made that jump from doing the math to the C minus. So I apologize. I think that's my 5th time in this meeting apologizing to all of you folks. So could have handled it better, and going forward, definitely will. I have I had a review with Chair several weeks ago, and so I'm going to prepare a response and provide it to you folks.
Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Edwin.
Matter of perspective, having been audited and reviewed hard from the very beginning under the first CEO and 5 CEOs later, I would say Laurie has done an excellent job compared to what we found in the initial years of Hart. And for that, I commend you for it. But I think for going forward, the board can do better in its HR committee by setting performance goals and measuring you as satisfactory, unsatisfactory, fully satisfactory, or over excellent in the ratings. That would eliminate a lot of the mathematical calculations. We're seeing that in high schools and colleges where grade creep is often misinterpreted or inflated, and we're fighting that battle with the Department of Education at this time.
With all due respect, this is a joke, Laurie. Then Laurie's going to divide everything by 3. And then we're going to come up with D minus. Sorry, joke. But that's in essence what you did.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
So, the way that score is calculated is part of Lori's contract. And I didn't really feel like we have any authority to change that until we have a new contract. So we're kind of stuck with that. Now this year it's late, but we have these that we added are kind of like goals and objectives of the important stuff that we need to work on together this year. And it doesn't directly relate to how the scoring is done, but it gives Lori and her team, these really key objectives of what we think is the most important during performance of this year. Some of it was, transition to DTS, right? Check, right? This is what happens when we get old. Can I turn our phone on?
Tell her to speak for herself. She said, "Oh,
My watch always answers everything." But the other thing I wanted to share is, as you move into executive land, stuff gets harder. Stuff gets impossible sometimes. People have impossible jobs. I would argue that the park director has, granted, one of the most difficult jobs in Hawaii. She's running the largest public works project. She's our director from Hawaii, and I think we all feel that we want to give her the best opportunity to succeed. Now, granted that it's really hard for us engineers not to just do numbers with everything, but the scale was met, and when I described it to people, it was that 3 met expectations. Now, when you take these really super hard jobs, met expectations is good. Okay, so you might start as a junior employee and sky's the limit, and you get all 5s all the time. But as you kind of creep up, when you're president of the United States, the president will like everything you did. Okay,
he's 4. I mean, he's 2. If he's lucky, he's 2.
He's kind of a 2 if he's lucky, right?
Right.
So the way that I would encourage you to look at it is meeting expectations is doing exactly what you need to do your job. It's really hard to exceed expectations in every area. So although it feels like that when we do those calculations, we do think you're doing a good job. We do think that you're learning in this job because it's a growth. Every new position is a growth for everyone, including the board members who may not have been on a board. I've never been on a board like this. This board is really different than other boards, right? And so I just want to let everybody know that 3 is meet expectations. Meet expectations means you did what you needed to do. And yeah, there were like a little few things on this side and a couple good things on this side. And you were more on the positive side. And so I really would encourage you to take it as that and try really hard not to get your calculator out every time, right? So, and that's what it's meant to be. It's meant to be some feedback. A lot of the little quotes in there, they're all over the place, right? Because every board member feels differently, and you can't please everyone. So I think I told Lori in private, but I'll say it in public. It's kind of like, you have a mother. You're never going to please your mother. You're going to bring an A+, and she's going to say, why wasn't that A++? I got a 4.0. Why didn't you get a 5.0? And so that's why we set up objectives of the important things you need to work on, because we know that if something falls to the wayside, it was not on that list. And maybe it should be not counted as strictly, even though there might be a comment on it, as the things that we thought were the most important objectives to meet this year. And so those objectives are really qualitative to some extent. So you'll see things like fully staffed park. Well, yes, of course we'd love to fully staff park, but and you get a 5 if you fully staff park. But we know that that's like a really, really tough call. So we're going to work on some of those together with everyone. And I just want to let everybody know. I mean, I don't want people to think that the board feels like that. And I want to encourage Lori to speak to everyone individually if you have questions about the comments or anything. But it really wasn't meant as that. And I'm so sorry that some of our meetings got delayed. And even the report got delayed, but we're going to do better next year. And the message is not what we were. The message is not what I saw in the media and how I saw people respond. So, thank you for your time.
Appreciate that feedback. Thank you, Michelle.
Edwin, you have something else?
Yes. Now that you have a set of benchmark, you can hold the board to its feet to make sure that the ratings are higher than your benchmark. One of the things that the university has that made many of us nervous as instructors was that when they introduced the concept of students rating the teachers as well as the teachers rating the students. It forced us to improve, but also forced us to have valuable feedback for improving our teaching skills. So at some point in the future, you may want to introduce a concept of rating the board members.
There you go. That's a lose-lose situation. Like, you know, C minus.
Well, you know, the interesting that you mentioned university, because the problem I had when I taught the law school was because I had 40 students and I was promised only 10 to 12, is that I was forced to grade on a scale. So the bulk had to come in at C. Whether, it had nothing to do with whether they all deserved an A. I was forced to do this, and everything had to be in the C category. So I could only have, I think they told me how many A's I could give, how many B's I could give, and the bulk had to be C's. And then I have to have some that were unsatisfactory. And if you go to law school, if you get anything lower than a C, you don't get credit. So under your scale, it would be 1, 2, 3. That's it. Because then after that, you fail. Even if you get a D, you don't get credit, which is the situation. So I think that there's different reasons that things, and that time it's a policy and it constrained. So that even in a university system, it's not fair. It's what they decide is how you do it. Kika, did you have something?
No.
Oh, your thing is on.
Chair,
Anyone
this
else?
is Natalie.
Yes,
Yeah.
Natalie?
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to comment on the agenda itself because
Can you make it louder? I can't hear you.
I think that's
Okay.
gonna be an R.
How to do that. Is this better?
Okay, that's better.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to comment on the agenda itself because I thought when I read this that the board was going to go into executive session and talk about metrics or something else. I had no idea that you were going to be talking about the C minus and the GET comment. So the question I have is, it seemed when you were making your introductory comments, Chair, that this agenda item was just put on the agenda at the request of a board member. And I thought that you approved the agenda. So am I mistaken or did I misunderstand you?
I'm saying a
that.
board member made the request and I put it on. Because I believe that board members have a right to request. I'm the final decision maker as to whether it's going to go on the agenda or not. But this is something that I think was very important, especially the issue about the GET, which was not something that this board had approved. But that's why they're both personnel related matters, and Laurie had the option of going into executive session or not. It's her call.
Understood. So I just request in the future that if there's something like this, that it be a little more detailed so that we can understand what will be discussed. That's my only comment.
And Natalie, I appreciate that because I know there are other board members who had the same misperception on it. But this was not on this agenda. This is a repeat of what was on the prior agenda. So if you saw this in the last agenda, believe me, you're more than welcome to contact me directly and ask me, what is this? That this thing we couldn't go through because we ran out of quorum and we moved this from the last agenda to this agenda. So if you had concerns about this, you could have asked about it too. And believe me, if you have any questions about the agenda, anyone, any member of this board has any questions, contact me or contact Cindy. And I'll get back to you and explain why it's on the agenda and what was intended. I don't necessarily tweak the language of the agenda item, but yeah. So yeah,
All right,
this is something that we carried over. It isn't something that's new, but next time if you have an issue, please let me know.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Not. I don't know if you talked to 5, Laurie. Okay. Oh, anyone else? I assume no one else has any other comments on 4. And by the way, I do want to say that I think Michelle's doing more than a, I don't know how to explain it, but this is a task that Michelle has undertaken, and I give her my mahalos and full appreciation because it's not easy. It's easier, in my opinion, to simply say, you're okay, you're doing a good job, keep it up. And, I didn't need it for you. I'm using you as an example. But, I think that's easier. It's more difficult to do a situation where you are trying to assist and trying to make the difference. And because she fundamentally believes in you. So, that's a different kind of situation. And I give her a lot of credit because she has, maybe she's an engineer, so she has a lot more patience. But I'm the exact opposite. And I'll be the first to admit it. I am not like that. I am just, I don't expect anything more or less of you than I expect of myself. That's the way I am.
Yeah, the dragon mom, right? but the dragon mom still believes in you. That's the thing that I would really convey. And so we're gonna work on all our relationships this next year too. And Lori, we really do believe in you. I think sometimes we're on the opposite side of the tables and our voices get raised, honestly, because we're like so passionate about it. But I am an engineer that had to like kind of step up and do the politics and things that I didn't like and weren't natural to me. And it's a little bit different. It's not a black and white world, and it's just something that we gotta learn to deal with. So
Thank you, Michelle and Chair. This is the first time getting real candid feedback from you folks. I really appreciate it. And definitely to your point, Michelle, got to improve on the relationships going forward. So really, it didn't come across that way in the eval. So thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, let's move to agenda item number 5. I had called for public testimony already. I don't see anyone else stepping forward. So let's go to agenda item number 5.
Thank you, Chair. This is another one. I need to apologize to you folks. I know fully aware of what I'm allowed and not allowed to do. Definitely cannot take any position at a city council, state legislator without the board approval. I know that. So I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt of being taken out of context. The question really was, do you foresee you're going to have to extend the GET-TAT to get to Ala Moana? And that's, maybe I should have answered it a little bit. Well, I didn't want to just say, I need board approval to say that, but that is the reality. I think we are going to have to, but I did say now's not the time. Probably in about 2 years, because I still feel Hart needs to prove ourselves, not you board, Hart needs to prove ourselves to the state legislators that we're doing a good job and need to gain their trust. So there's no way I'm going to reach out to any one of those without your folks' approval. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify on this and to apologize to you folks again.
And thank you very much. And I just would like to say that Nick's are 2 years because we are watching the unfortunate situation in Lahaina.
Yeah, correct,
So,
correct.
the board would have to discuss and see where we are, but we are all faced and we should have started this meeting with really our condolences for what happened in Lahaina as a board as well. But it is something that we know that everything related to government, especially on the state level, is going to go topsy-turvy now because the priorities are going to be very different. Thank you. Any questions or comments for Lori? Yes.
I would like to say that as we move into next year and the year after, and we get a contractor to do CCGS, that contract will include an option to go to Ala Moana and some time scale. And so probably next year, we could probably start looking at what a schedule might look like. We're going to be faced with some decision points that we need to share with the legislature on if you want us to get to Ala Moana, these are the things that we're going to have. And so, this year is kind of the time to kind of prepare for that, understand what that would mean, look at that in kind of a pig. And then, next year we would kind of flow into that. And And then we can have the city council make the decisions, but we need to set it up so that there are decision points and that everybody, all of our stakeholders understand where we are. Because we can get to all around. We just need to convey how we would get to all.
Understood. Anyone else? Well, one of the main reasons or the main things we're going to have to do, and he's sitting back there, Rick Keene, you are going to have to really sharpen your pencil on our financial plan, especially as we did with the recovery plan, because you have already found by just doing the bonding versus the commercial paper, different delta, we brought about 400 million more, somewhere along that line. So also the concept of the GET and the TAT and the state TAT may be affected by Lahaina, but the bulk of the state TAT, I believe, is really still Waikiki and Oahu. And it's also going to be the issue of how we handle or how the city handles the collections on the Airbnb types operation. So, those are things that you are going to have to, and you probably will. I'm not trying to say anything about the pig, but the pig's probably going to need that kind of information as the finance committee is as well. So yes, I agree with Michelle that there's going to be some point in time, but that's far from saying we're going to go in for a GT increase, and that's or an extension of Act One. That's a totally different scenario. But before we get to that point, I'm giving you a forewarning, Rick. You're going to have to really look at those figures because the recovery plan, use of bonds versus commercial paper, which is the position of this board, as you know, has resulted with a substantial delta. And I believe the amount that we use for the growth of the GET has been proven really low. And I don't believe that the fire is going to affect Oahu's income, but we'll have to see how that does. But that's definitely an issue that we have to be very cognizant of.
Sure.
Yes.
So, I mean, I apologize, but I just want to be consistent. So I know this agenda item is talking about the comment that was made regarding a request for GET extension, which is the method of financing.
Not necessarily.
Well, that's what but it's a method
right
of financing. But I'm hearing in the discussion, and I just want to clarify for myself, the project itself, we're not saying that it's an option to go to Ala Moana, are we?
No. What the board's position has always been, and I think the mayor's position and the city's position has been that we will get to Ala Moana.
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I just want to make sure I'm clear in my understanding. The city council approved the project to Ala Moana, and that hasn't changed.
Well, they did accept the recovery plan, which truncated it. So yes, in terms of what the actual plan is, it is still going to Ala Moana, but they've approved the truncated system when they adopted the
That is
recovery
the
plan.
FTA portion of the project.
No,
but it hasn't changed the overall project to Ala Moana. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yes, it doesn't change the overall. It ends the FTA funding.
I guess what I'm trying to say is because I'm hearing in the discussion that some is making me believe that we feel it's discretionary, but I don't see it that way. And if I'm incorrect, I guess
the best way to put it is this way, Kika. I don't think anybody believes it's discretionary, but the real question is when and how.
And what funding. Yes.
That's right. When and how.
Yeah.
That's the issue. That's why the GET came up, because it's
right.
When and how.
It's a method.
Right.
It's not the method, but it's a method. But it doesn't change the underlying fact that the project is to Ala Moana that was approved by the city council. And unless they change it, that's the project.
Right. That's the problem. That's the project.
Thank you.
So if
Yes.
if I may add, as because it's not a matter of where we're going to end up, but how we are going to fund the remaining portion of it. In contingency planning, I don't hear discussions about public-private partnerships for building parking lots. I don't hear about management of the land or the vendors or commercial activities that will develop around the stations. I don't hear discussions about affordable housing being built around the stations and how the heart is going to benefit from it and derive revenues from it. On the because a fair recovery box is usually 30 to 60%, 60% is the max. The city and Heart will have to address the deficits of how to pay for the operations and maintenance, as well as the continued expansion of Heart to the rest of the island. So there's a lot of contingency planning that needs to be done. And Laurie and her staff are going to have, as well as Jacobs Engineering, is going to have to come up with ideas of how to provide the funding that is needed to complete the project.
Sorry, Chair, we're veering a little off the
Yes.
topic.
Okay, we have been warned that we are veering off of the agenda item. As I've been watching him and I was wondering when he was going to speak up, but he was trying to give us all the latitude that he could possibly. But with that, members, anything else? If not, we are going to move off of this agenda. And thank you very much. I know, Laurie, you have an appointment that you got to get to.
Sure, I think I have to leave about 11 o'clock, so.
Oh,
thank you
okay.
for excusing me.
Okay, so we got half an hour more to go. So if when you see Laurie leave, she has told us already that she has told me she has a speaking engagement in Waikiki. Isn't Ed going with you?
It was supposed to be this morning.
Bunch of meetings this morning all week.
Oh, yes. All right. So with that, we're going to move to agenda item number 6, which is the committee assignments. And is there anyone here to testify about committee assignments? Anyone on? Okay, so I'm going to proceed. As you know, under the rules, committee assignments are the discretion of the chair. And though after July, we should have made this, but it was a matter of, as you remember, the intervening factor was Edwin. And we do have to thank Mark for his service. So with that, this is the chair's, and I apologize to everyone if you don't like your assignments. So, so you can.
You have a handout on that one?
No, it's solely discretionary. So if you want to beat up on me, you can beat up on me afterwards. But so this is committee assignments is totally this. If you really don't like it, I can change that at any time. It's difficult for me to change, but still doable is the pigs, which you see it further down in the agenda. So we'll get to that. But with that, government affairs and legal matters. Anthony, you do such a wonderful job. So we're continuing you as the chair on that. Vice Chair is Ed Sniffen because we want him to come to more meetings. No. And also members is Michelle Boongrabber and Roger Morton. Finance, the chair is Robert Yu. The vice chair is Edwin Young. And also on this committee, like project oversight is kind of loaded with people, sorry, but so we will have Roger Morton, Art Tolentino, and Kika Bukowski, and actually Michelle, right? So, so some of you who have more than 2 or 3 assignments, believe me, if you don't want to do it, I understand, but you got to at least take 2 assignments. Project oversight is Kika Bukowski is chair, Michelle Boongrabber is vice chair. I have Anthony Alto, Robert Yu, Ed Sniffen, and Art Tolentino on this, because these are the 2, not that anybody else's committee isn't important, but this is the committees that are going to do the heavy lifting. So remember one thing, if you cannot make the meetings, which I understand perfectly well, if you cannot, especially if this goes to Ed and Roger, Roger, now that you have the operations maintenance part, please let me know, because I think we got enough people here that even if you don't make it, we have quorum, but if you've got a real problem, let me know. Human Resources, Michelle Boongrabber is chair, Anthony Alto is vice chair, and we have Roger Morton on this, and we also have Art Tolentino on that. Internal Audit, Edwin Young is chair, Robert Yu is vice chair, and we have Kika Bukowski and Art Tolentino on that. Art, I didn't make you chair or vice chair, so you gotta make it up with being member. Okay. And then we have this committee called Executive Matters, which is set forth in our rules. And that we don't really have I don't have a choice. That's already determined. So I'm chair, Anthony Alto is vice chair, Michelle Boongrabber, in Kika Bukowski, and Robert Yu are members. Okay, so members, that's it. Like I said, if you have any issues, come see me afterwards. Thank you. Any questions, comments on this assignment? If not, we're moving on to agenda item number 7, which is the report on the permitted interaction group to investigate Board of Directors rules and procedures. Now, members, anyone in the public wishing to testify on agenda item number 7? Cindy, anyone? Okay. So we'll begin on agenda item number 7. It is attached. So the way, just to refresh your recollection on this, so we form PIGs, and what we need to do is we need to file a report, which is what you have before you here, and that, but we don't discuss any of this. It's just for your information. The next board meeting, we will discuss the matters. Attached to this is the proposed changes to the rules. So what I would like to say is that, you know, the PIG, we lost members. We had Jay Butai as well as Dean Hazama before on this. I mean, and Dean Uchida, sorry, was on this before. And then, so we kept the configuration, which was left was Kika Bukowski, Michelle Boongrabber, and myself. So we got their inputs, and this is the rules. What we will have to discuss, and it's in your report, is whether or not we're going to enact it pursuant to Chapter 91, which is the Hawaii Administrative Procedures Act. And the reason why it's in here is if you check the charter says we can enact rules in accordance with Chapter 91. So members, unfortunately, we don't have a discussion. The report is here before you, and please review the rules, especially POC, which you really kind of had your opportunity, and Robert, Finance, and all of the different committees are spelled out in the rules. What is, just as an explanation, is the financial policies, which existed separately before, are all incorporated in our rules.
Chair,
Yes.
just a comment. I'm not discussing anything from the report. I specifically asked where the materials were prior to the meeting, and I was told there were no materials. So, you know, from a sunshine law perspective and from the public's perspective, I think it's at least disappointing that this report is not linked to the agenda, and I request that link be provided. And then I guess we'll have the discussion during next month's meeting.
Natalie, I'll have Dan Gluck respond to you because your understanding of the PIG report is incorrect. So, Dan?
Hi, Natalie, it's Dan. So, under the Sunshine Law rules, if board members are going to receive materials prior to the meeting, it has to be made public at least 48 hours. However, the PIG can just report directly to the board, so none of the other board members received any materials until just this moment.
And there is no discussion, Natalie, on any of this.
Right,
So
I understand.
the public is getting it at the same time that the board is getting it. So at the next board meeting is when it will be agendized for discussion. So
Okay,
we
so,
needed to, that's what makes the pig process so different, is I have to dissolve the pig with the report before we can go anywhere with it. And that's what this is. We're dissolving this pig with a report, and then we're gonna do all the discussion at the next meeting where the public and the board has it at the same time. Matter of fact, everybody's gonna have it a month in advance, or how many days to the next board meeting.
okay, so thank you, Dan, for that clarification. And I just request that it be in an accessible position on the Heart website, because I found personally that materials are difficult to find. And of course, it should be available to the public. So thank you very much.
Natalie, I join you with that. With all due respect to Laurie and her staff, I can't find anything on the website myself. So what I end up doing is bookmarking and going back to the same place. But yes, it's very difficult. I concur. But that's not within our control. Yes,
I have a procedural question.
right.
So from now to the next board meeting, will board members have the opportunity to review and make recommended amendments to this draft? Or
Yes. So,
including members of the PIG who
right,
didn't get their comments in on time? Okay.
yes,
So Cindy will collect them.
right. Yeah, so I may differ with your representation of members of the PIG who didn't get their comments in on time, given the
Speaking of myself,
That's right. So I'm taking exception with your comments because I know I bugged you for your comments, but in any event, I just don't want you to leave people with the impression that for some reason I've silenced you, and that's not true. Okay, so where we are, so let's move on. So that was the report of the permitted interaction group to investigate the board of directors rules and policies. And if you review the report, it'll tell you what items we have to decide at the next meeting as well. Thank you. The next is the dissolution and reconstitution of the permitted interaction group to investigate the completion of the Honolulu Rail Transit project to Ala Moana and beyond. This is our Ala Moana and beyond. And as you all know, this is really, we're just gonna have to reconstitute. We've lost Mark, and we have some shifting within the PIG. And with all due respect to Dan Gluck, who says we don't need to appoint a chair for the PIG, he didn't say you can't. He says you don't have to. I believe that I will appoint a chair with the concurrence of this board, because then you have somebody to yell at, sorry, Anthony, and to bug, and then to get this thing going. This is, by the way, Anthony, this is the most popular PIG request. So with that, let me, and as you
It must be my new
remember,
haircut.
Mark Holland was on this committee, and Mark is no longer there. So I propose with this board's approval that we reconstitute this PIG, and we do it with Anthony Alto as the chair. And the members are as follows: Edwin Young, Robert Yu, Kika Kulski, and 2, 3, 4. I have another person. I think I had Roger on this earlier. I think I had you on it, Roger, and Roger Morton. So Anthony Alto chair, Edwin Young, Robert Yu, Kika Bukolski, and Roger Morton. Yes, we need a motion. Well, do we have we need a motion, right? I need a motion. Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion, members? If not, do we have unanimous consent? We have unanimous consent. Thank you very much. That was agenda item number 7. By the way, anyone who here wanted to testify on agenda item number 7, which is the reconstitution of the PIG for Alamoana and beyond? Hearing none, no one else. Thank you very much, Anthony Alto, for continuing to serve. Next one is agenda item number 9 is a dissolution and reconstitution of the permitted interaction group to investigate energy costs for the Honolulu Rail Transit project. Anyone here wishing to testify on this matter? Hearing none, nothing, Cindy, right? So members, as you may recall, this is the one that when we did the Waimana Street situation with Hawaiian Electric, the one thing that we, among other things, what we got them to agree to is that they would work with us on rates, which is very critical because they have this weird way of operating where I think if we start the train within X amount of so many times within that peak hour, if I understood this correctly from Roger, then we would kick into the higher rate structure. So HECO has agreed to meet with our PIG and to discuss this. So with that, and as you know, this was also something that Mark Holland was on. So we're gonna have to change that as well. So my recommendation, members, subject to your approval, and I have to apologize ahead of time because I did not check, but Michelle Grabber, I have you as chair of this PIG. Are you, I can make you just a member if you don't want to chair it.
Well, the only question that I had, Chair, was, it's kind of an O&M cost, and so I'm struggling with, should this PIG be in support of DTS and work with them in the lead? I don't mind being chair, I'm happy to be chair, I'm happy to work on this, but I'm wondering whether to ask Roger to set up a team on his side and that we actually are kind of in support of his team in this PIG. Because it seems to me that we totally care, we all want the wraparound cost to be correct and everything. But I'm wondering whether that might be something that.
Well, I guess you can talk about it in your PIG, but I think that Roger is potentially in a conflict on this specific matter because he has a direct invested interest in it. The other person who is also affected by this, and I think the way people are viewing it is that we're the ones who got the concession from Hawaiian Electric that they will talk to us. So it has to be something within HART. So the other thing that I think we need to discuss, well, Robert Yu is also affected by it with the bus and how the peak hour works. And I think while we are doing, until the point that we are actually turning things over to DTS,
Right.
we're still using electricity.
Right.
So I don't know how much of that we're paying at peak hours and how much of that can be adjusted.
Yeah, I guess I don't. Let me work with Roger, and we'll set up this PIG, the members that designate, and I'll work with Roger, and we'll work it out so that we have adequate representation from DTS, and that we're working as a team. Because that's probably.
Chair. Yeah, I have no problem. I can set up something where staff could support this PIG committee. Probably would want to get CCSR or climate change and sustainability folks because they have expertise within utilities as well. So, but no issues at all. I appreciate that we do have the information. So we'll be happy to support the PIG in any way we can.
Thank you. So remember now, the PIG is called, it is to investigate energy costs for the Honolulu Rail Transportation Project. And because of that, we are able to bring in expertise externally for the PIG and for the PIG to discuss. I guess with that, the only thing I will have to make sure of is that Roger's part of it. Because then he would not be able to participate in the PIG itself if he's not one of the 5, right? So,
Chair,
yes.
just a comment. With respect to this energy cost PIG, especially as it concerns Hawaiian Electric, I'm not sure whether we may need to take a different approach, a more patient approach, just because of what's happening, not just in Maui, but to Hawaiian Electric as a organization, just from what
The
I
fact that
read.
they're being sued.
Well, I mean, or being, or looking at restructuring or whatever. I just know what I read, but so I just want to make sure that there's a certain, awareness out there. I don't know.
No, I understand that. And if they're willing to suspend their fees and their costs, that's one thing, but they're not. I'm pretty sure they're not. So I don't think, I mean, we sound very cold-hearted, but they're a regulated monopoly. And they've had the benefit of being a regulated monopoly for a very long time. And I think we need to be in a position where at least the pig is functioning and calling the shots. So with that, members.
Chair, could I just comment on that?
Anthony.
I had a brief chat with Scott Sue when we opened the.
I'm sorry,
the
Anthony, I'm
rail-
having a difficulty hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I had a brief chat when we inaugurated the rail with Scott Sue, and I joking him told him that Hart would like to completely sever all connection with HECO because we wanted to produce all of our own power, expecting him to say, that he didn't like that idea. And he said, on the contrary, he would find it extremely useful because he's not sure how HECO is going to be able to provide all the power as we decarbonize our economy. So I actually don't think that on that piece of it, at least, that's particularly a problem.
Well, you know what? This is just me. I think it's because they don't want to produce that 46 kV substation myself. So I've always felt that they didn't have a sufficient amount of electricity for us, but they just didn't want to go to the PUC. That's just my opinion. And then do the 46 kV. But I'm not surprised, but thank you very much.
Right.
And Anthony, I believe I have you on this pig anyway. So with that, and I'll entertain a motion after I read off the members. So Michelle, I have you as chair. We have Roger as a member, only because Roger can't appear as a resource person if you're not on the pig, because you're gonna count. See, you and Ed always mess me up, but no, I'm just kidding. But you have to be on it. Robert, you also has to be on it, but he can't appear as a resource on the bus costs. So, and I have Michelle. Anthony, do you want to serve on this pig? I didn't get a chance
Love
to
to.
ask you.
I'd love to. I've been
Okay.
investigating away already.
Anthony Alto is on this pig. And I'm gonna I'm gonna take myself off and put Edwin on this pig too, because we need
Which Edwin?
this Edwin.
Okay.
Not Ed's different. Edwin Young.
They both say Edwin here in front of me here.
Right. So okay. So with that, can I have a motion? Yes.
Can we have a real brief recess?
Okay.
Real brief.
Brief recess, subject to the college chair. Thank you. We're back. We're on agenda item number 9, which is a dissolution and reconstruction of the permitted interaction group to investigate energy costs for the Honolulu Rail Transportation Project. Members, I think when we left, Anthony was speaking and Kika asked for a slight timeout, which we got. But we are at the point where I believe we can have a motion, which basically reconstitutes the pig to investigate the energy costs for the Honolulu Rail Transportation Project. I had listed the members, and of course, Michelle has kindly agreed to serve. And Roger and Robert Yu, who probably are going to be resource people, are going to have to be part of that pig. And Anthony Alto and Edwin Young. So may I have a motion to that effect?
Second.
Okay, we move and seconded. Any discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent? We do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle. And like I said, the reason we're naming chairs is that so people can go and complain to you that you're not having your meetings, right, Anthony? Poor Anthony, he must be on whatever time zone. Okay, the next item is the dissolution and reconstitution of the permitted interaction group to investigate the full funding grant agreement. The chair is gonna defer this and continue with the names that we do have, simply because we expect to get some kind of notice shortly, and I don't think we need the full contingent there. So without objection, members, I'm gonna defer item number 10. Before I do, anyone here having any comments? Yes.
Just wondering if you could state who the members are.
Yeah, good thing. Do we know who the members are?
I have Anthony, I have Robert Yu, I've got Michelle, Kika, and the chair.
Yep. Okay, got it. So you must have known you were on it, so that's why you wanted to see. So you're still on it. Okay, so with that, no one here to comment on 10. So we're moving to agenda item number 11, status of Federal Transit Administration extension, expiring funds and critical dates. So that's, anyone here to testify on that?
No, but I had a comment.
Oh, wait, let me get any other? No one else. Okay, this is supposed to be Rick Keene. Status of Federal Transit Administration extension of expiring funds and critical dates.
I guess I was gonna ask for this because when I was talking to Lori, the expiring funds came up and I thought it would be good to let the board know what the status is and all the timelines. Before we get to September and it's sort of like, it's September and it's expiring September 31st, but yeah, we got it. So I thought just date a month in advance, would be a
Okay,
preemptive strike here.
so with that, Rick,
Okay, Lori commented on this earlier. We have had several conversations with the FTA. We sent a formal letter to request an extension to Nuria. They acknowledged receipt of that, and as Lori mentioned earlier, we talked to Ray a couple of days ago, and they are monitoring the situation. They're totally aware of it. They're waiting to see if Congress takes any action, which has happened the last couple of times that it needed to be extended.
right,
If Congress doesn't act, they're ready to step in and do that. And Ray has confirmed that Nuria does have authority to extend that.
Do we have any indication that Congress is looking at it?
No,
So we don't think they're gonna do anything, it's gonna be left.
that's correct. That's our expectation. But we thought that last time too, and then there was a bill went through right at the very end. But they have confirmed they're aware of it, they're monitoring it, and they're ready to take action on it.
And this is the last time we can extend it?
I don't know. That question came, I don't know the answer to that. We'll follow up on that and see.
Okay, we can know next one. And then how long is the extension for?
Last time was 3 years, I think. I think 3 years is the maximum it can be extended. I want to say there was one, well, although it's been done more recently than that. I don't remember, but I thought the maximum was 3 years, but I'll double check on that.
Once they give us the money, then that's the end, or we have to expense it and it's in that time frame that's extended?
I think we have to basically spend it before we even get it. We have to, for us to get the money, we have to show that it's been spent. So the first $125 million tranche, once we get the FFTA done, they will release that. Then we'll go through a grant submission process to get that. And along with that, submit invoices. We're hoping to get the first 125 sometime. We have it in our current financial plan in December, but based on the schedule we're working on right now, it could slip a little bit more than that.
So basically, we're using it to pay ourselves back, and then
Correct.
it just goes back into our funds. So
That's correct.
these are all expenses that we've already incurred.
That's correct. That's the same thing with GET&T too, right?
And I think you already have a grant, so it's not new money. I'm not
But
sure
there
you-
is a submission that's got to go
Yeah.
through, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually it's a reimbursable type thing, but usually it could be with FTA, it can be pretty quick. If you got to have the eligible expenses.
Exactly. And we already have those identified.
The
is this for the total 744?
The 744 is what will be extended.
Right.
There will likely need to be another extension because of the tranches that they laid out for us. You know, in the recovery plan, we put 125, or our expectation right now is 125.
250.
Up on the amendment to the FFGA, 250. Up on the grant of the CCGS contract. The other tranches were 125 each approximately, and the milestone for those haven't been identified yet. But those will come in years far enough out. It'll go beyond that 3-year possible extension date. So they will need, some of them will need probably to be extended again at some point in the future.
And we didn't, the board's position was those tranches should actually be scrunched. That we shouldn't, we should ask the FTA and the recovery plan, we said the FTA should go back and not, and give it to us maybe in 3 tranches, I think was our position.
We have asked that multiple times, and we'll continue to work with them on that. They did accelerate part of it. When we did the recovery plan, the guidance that they gave us up front was, as I mentioned, 125 for the FFGA, and then 125 for the contract award, and then the rest of it was spread out. They did accelerate 125 into that pot too, so that now we're getting 250. So they did accelerate it some, but yeah, it's still spread out over about a 4 to 5 year period.
Anyone else? Yes, Roger.
How is cash flow? Is this
It's
critical?
fine. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. No, we don't either. So we've been proactive in working with them on it, and they've assured us that that won't happen.
So anything else, members? Not? Thank you, Rick. So we're gonna move to item number 12, which is staff reporting to the Board of Directors, and this subsection A is draft quad status chart. Seems like a Michelle issue. And B, action item review. This is supposed to be Nate. Nate, hello, Nate.
Yeah, this was me too.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me go
Public
ask
testimony.
anyone here to testify? Anyone called in testify? Nothing. So let's, and I'm calling all of agenda item number 12 at the same time. So with that, Nate and Michelle. Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, so this was kind of like my action from the last board meeting when I said, we're not really getting like an executive summary from the executive director, what goes in there, right? And what I'm suggesting is sort of like what was discussed earlier, that in one page, we can like status, you know, the monthly status of the project. And my suggestion was kind of like a quad chart, but it doesn't have to be quads. It's just a summary chart that is really at an executive level. It's a status of the entire project, finances, politics, lawsuits, whatever else, you know, housing, any of those things. So it does repeat some items maybe in the monthly report or the finances, but it's kind of if you were to take that one page and put 12 of them in a book, that would tell you the story of this project throughout the year. And it would serve, if you were to just take one page from every board of directors, as our talking points of what went on the month before, right? So it's kind of the elevator speech that you would give to people of, so how's it going, Michelle? And I'd be like, oh, I'm looking at my chart. So it was kind of this idea where you would be able to, on the right side of a chart, see some financial and programmatic program control metrics. And on the left side of the chart, it was kind of dealer's choice, but it would describe the project, sort of like what's going on, what concerns there are, those kinds of things. And Kika and I and Nate and Lori had a meeting earlier this week, and it came up, and they're just like, well, we're not really sure what you want, and what is this for, and what do we bring to the board of directors? We didn't want to bring something that was half-baked, but in another way, I think that there's a real need for this kind of executive level, one chart summary, elevator speech thing that, like, you know, you can just rip out and take with you. And that's like what's going on in the project, what's the concerns, what's the major things, and it doesn't fall under any particular committee while it draws from information from all the committees. So Nate, is that a kind of a fair summary of what we talked about? And
Yeah,
Kika?
very fair summary of what we talked about that. And then to build on that a little bit, you know, we're trying to find at what level does it make sense to report progress to the board of directors, knowing we go into a very detailed presentation with the POC, right? Michelle brought from her history an example of that one-page summary. I was able to pull up from my history some other examples. And so I think we're close to landing on what maybe a one-page executive summary looks like. And Michelle's exactly right. So, you know, growing up in project controls, we did the same thing for each project director. We gave him one sheet, so if he was at any meeting, he could pull it up and he'd know the main issues, etc. So we're trying to land on that same sort of format, one-page report for the board. I'd say we're pretty close. Michelle gave us a good starting point, and so that's also something that I can work through to try to find a form and format that works.
What about the action item review? Is that covered by what you just said? There's two items here.
Now, that was, we don't do action items, and then somebody will say, oh, yeah, I'll get right back to you. And I thought at the end of the meeting, what we should do every time is actually keep track of the action items, who gave the action item, who's responding to the action item, when we think it's due, and then status it at the next meeting.
Okay.
So it was sort of like bringing it up to the board, and I think we used to do it. I think Cindy said she used to do it, and it is, you have to keep a spreadsheet, okay? You do have to keep a spreadsheet, so it takes time. But I think it's worthwhile because I think that maybe we say we're going to do something. I know sometimes I say I'm going to do something and then I just forget and nobody reminds me or anything. So I don't know whether we need a secretary, a secretariat for the board to do it or something, but it was a discussion about, reviewing action items for the board for either us or for Heart members, and then actually keeping track of them so that, if we say we're going to put it on the agenda next time, do we actually put it on the agenda next time? If we say we're going to review it in a committee, we review it on the committee. And so it was a discussion point for the board members to see if this was something that that they agreed we might be able to do. So that's what this was. And then, it was kind of like under Heart, like, we don't have that many people. Cindy's all by herself. Do you guys mind putting somebody on this to help us keep track of it? But what does everybody think? I think it's kind of good to keep track of what actions people took. So, and then the person that gave the action can decide if it's closed or not.
So I think you kind of hit on the problem towards the end, which is that we just got Cindy, and that's something that's irked me because that's in 2016. That was one of the major things that I went to city council for, was to make sure that Cindy had assistance, and then the prior board somehow got rid of all our staff. So I think that what we need to do is, and that's part of the rules that our rules, and there's the division of power between the board as well as Heart. So I understand what you're saying, but it is true. We only have one person. And so that we're asking for a lot of work to be done with one person. Not that she can't do it. It's just that that's a lot on the plate for one person. So on this, and is there any other questions or comments? Because I'm trying to figure out how to best proceed on this. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
One question. So as far as the draft quad status chart, are we looking at that as a separate summary that's reportable by the ED in her report, or?
Nope, we can ask Michelle how she perceives that.
I guess I could see it either under the ED or as it would fall under the ED, but somebody else might brief it on behalf of her. But it would be a chart really for the board. And you guys kind of talked about a summary, and maybe that's kind of what I was kind of hoping for. But like what Kika said, it does draw a ton of information from the POC in the monthly report. And what we don't want to do is create something that nobody's going to use. So it would be that the board really does find it useful to have a one-page summary, and And if it does, should it be in the monthly report or should it not be in the monthly report? Should it be just for the board of directors meeting? You know, those are some of the questions as we move forward.
Because
we might
isn't the perception that this quad report, this quad chart, is not only something that's regarding construction, it could regard financing and
Yeah.
everything else,
It
right?
should be the whole, it should be all of the project,
Right.
all of heart, everything.
So it would seem that if that's the case, then it should, because if it goes through the committees and comes to the board, that kind of doesn't seem to make sense. If it takes into account everything, that it should come directly to the board. And the question is, you know, whether it goes under the report by Lori as executive director, or do we have it as a general staff report to the board? Because I would think, and this is just me, that even if it went under the executive director, when it comes to the project-related items, Nate would be sitting there. Comes to finance, Rick Keene would be sitting there. So it almost means that, you know, maybe we should call it see how it works as a staff report, like we have it here, staff report to the board.
Yeah, I kind of defer to you on what works better, and I would be happy with putting it as a staff report and then seeing, you know, if the executive director might want to choose to move it to her section or not. I mean,
Yeah.
really kind of up to you, Colleen.
Why don't we start it with us, because that's the way it's here. We'll start it with a staff report, and then action item review. I think that's very necessary. Cindy, why don't you try? Maybe Dan can help you just for the beginning part until we finally get an assistant in here. And then we can get that. I think that should just be an item at the end of this agenda where we go back and we go look at what, or in the beginning, sort of like old business, right? If you had a normal looking agenda, it would be old business would be all of these items and what their status are. So why don't we try that? I don't think we need a vote on that. I think that's something that we're just gonna. Do you think we need a vote on it, Dan? This is on the changing of the status reports and action. Now, I think I'll use it under the discretion of the chair for board agenda. Okay, anything else? Any members have any other comments? If not, thank you very much, Nate. So you know what you gotta do. And Rick too back there, because he's gonna be part of this quad. So the next item is item number 13, city center utilities, relocation, traffic impacts. Anyone here to testify on that besides Joey? Any comments? Okay, Joey, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Vice Chair, and members, Joey Manahan, Government Relations and Public Involvement. 2 items to report to the board today. On Wednesday, August 2, on the 1700 block of Dillingham Boulevard, we had a utility strike. It was a gas line that resulted in a road closure for approximately about 2 hours while the line was being repaired. We had to reroute traffic, westbound traffic through Kalihi Street up Eluene and then back around through Mokoea. And then on the eastbound side, we rerouted them from Mokoea through Colburn back onto Dillingham. Again, it was about approximately 2 hours until the line was repaired. Any questions?
Was the line where you thought it was going to be and it was just an accidental strike, or was the line not where you thought it was going to be?
It was shown to be abandoned, I guess, and it was in fact active. Unfortunately, it was a stub. It was a lateral that it was capped off at the property line versus at the main, and so when it was marked, when they went into cut, it was hit.
Okay, thank you. Fair.
It was Nan who hit it.
It was.
Any other questions or comments? Is there further updates or just that the?
There's just one other update. It was this happened on Monday, August 7th, on the 1300 block of Dillingham. There was a water main break. It wasn't a utility strike. It was a break, but it was in the work zone and it caused a bit of a slowdown. No road closures. BWS did respond, and that was it. I mean, the cleanup. There was a lot of water and cleanup took a few hours. But
Any questions? Board of Water Supply, water main break. That was caused by what, traffic impact? We didn't hit it.
well, no, we didn't hit it, but we were working in the area. It was in the work zone.
So how did it break?
I'm not sure. It was just it happens.
It just happened,
I mean, these breaks they do happen.
but it's usually due to some kind of traffic or the line was bad to begin with and
Sometimes they're just old and they break. And there may be settling going on, but they break. I think there's like 2 a day. Not infrequent.
no, I know that, but it's usually caused by something.
Yeah, it might have done something. It might have been their heavy trucks or.
Yeah. It just broke.
It was broke, and BWS did take responsibility.
So why is it in your report if it just broke?
It was just there was a traffic. In fact, there was a lot of water and a lot of cleanup. We were out there. We responded.
I guess the reason I'm asking that is that, we get blamed for everything. Hart gets blamed for everything anyway. So it seems like if it's not our fault, it shouldn't be our fault.
It wasn't our fault. This one wasn't our fault. And it was BWS did take responsibility.
So BWS should have said it's our fault and it's just the old mains.
They did. In the media,
They did say it was their fault and it
Yes,
was the old
they
mains.
did.
Okay. Make sure that you don't give us anything that's not ours.
They said that.
Okay.
I think this is just an example of, some of the risk that the government takes when we're doing work, right? This wasn't Nan's fault. This was just a risk that happened and it might cause a delay in some of the work, a very slight delay. It depends. But these are the kinds of risks that we bear of stuff that happens that's outside of the control of the contractor, right? So it impacts us slightly, but it's not really it's not our fault, but the government takes the risk.
There was some.
Yes.
Joey, what was your assessment of how quickly the contractor reacted and set up the detour? Can you walk me through how that? I mean, I think they sound like they did a pretty quick job and a good job, but can you walk us through a little bit on how that worked?
I was alerted. I wasn't on site. I can get you the information. I just know that the detour was set up within minutes, and traffic was rerouted right away, and the road was closed right away.
Good job.
Probably good job to the contractor.
Anything else? And Edwin? Yes.
Just a comment.
Your thing.
Board of Water Supply in a normal year has a minimum of 10 water breaks.
And what about sewer? Yes.
Yeah. One question on the gas line. I'm guessing Director Morton was asking about the gas line break and the traffic detour and stuff, right? My thing is, do we have any or has any businesses filed any claims against Hart or the contractors with respect to, say, loss of business or whatnot because of the gas main break?
I haven't seen any claims come through as a result of this particular strike. I haven't. I would have to check to see if there were in the past, but not from this one. And it wasn't in service. The line wasn't in service. It was just where it was capped. Unfortunately, it wasn't serving a property or anything like that. It was an old lateral.
Wait a minute, I thought the the reports were that the businesses were shut down.
We had to, we had to evacuate because there was a ruptured gas line. People did have, they had to leave for about approximately between an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I thought you just said it wasn't an active gas line.
It wasn't an active gas line. It wasn't in service. However, the lateral where it was capped on the property line versus by the main where it would have been on Dillingham, underneath Dillingham.
Right.
And so the lateral extended outside underneath the sidewalk where we were doing the work.
So even with that, you had to evacuate because it seems like it's not. If it's not active, it's not active. But you're saying it was capped, but it's active.
Well, I mean, it still had gas that was being fed from the main. It's just that instead of being capped underneath the Dillingham portion, it was capped over by the house property over here. So that lateral actually was still active, but not in service, not providing any gas to any property.
So why weren't they able to cap it then? Simply cap it at where it should have been capped.
And that's what was done. That was the repair that was done.
But it took 2.5 hours or whatever it was for the.
It took approximately 2 hours, less than 2 hours.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Edwin. Oh,
Not me.
It comes out by itself.
okay. Anything else, members? No, that's it.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
So members, we have 2 executive sessions. This is regarding the 2 lawsuits. And I see that it's the same attorneys involved. So is there any reason why we cannot go into executive session on both of them at the same time?
The only issue is that I think Nate is going to be part of this second discussion on STG, but not the first. And so we could call him in, or you can go out and come back in.
Okay, why don't we just take it separately then? So the first item is going to be item number 14, which is City and County of Honolulu acting by and through Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation versus Victoria Ward Limited, number 18-1-1564-10 JMT. First of all, anyone here to testify on this matter, this agenda item? Nope, nothing, Cindy? So members, because this is a active lawsuit, may I have a motion for executive session? The board may enter into executive session pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-4, subsection 92-5A4, to consult with attorneys on questions and issues and matter pertaining to the board's powers, duty, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Thought members will have unanimous consent to go into executive session.
Chair?
I'm sorry. Natalie?
Yes, thank you. Just for the record, I'd like to comment that I understand I will not be allowed in executive session because I haven't signed the confidentiality agreement and there's a disagreement between the AG's office and Corporation Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if I can also add, Natalie, I believe the board's going to have 2 executive sessions, and then the meeting would be over. So I don't know if you wanted to stay around for when we come back out and go back in, but up to you.
I'll just wait till it's done and see if there are any other comments on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, are we in here? I assume we are because of Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody not involved in executive session, can you excuse yourself?
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, I've been looking for a puka for an item that isn't agendized, but it's to do with the situation in Lahaina. And I just wanted to throw out a question. As I understand it, Hart has some idle transformers and other electrical equipment. And I'm wondering if there's any possibility that, as I understand, it could be quite useful on Maui. I'm not sure if Nate is particularly if you'd be reluctant to release it, and I don't know if it's something that the board would need to discuss, in which case it would have to be properly agendized.
It would have to be
Um,
properly agendized, but nothing prohibits you, Anthony, from emailing your question directly to Nate.
All right, I'll do that then.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure, there may be an exception for unanticipated events, so I can check into that if you wanted to have that now.
Right. Anthony, we're gonna check whether we can, usually, doesn't it take like 2/3 for us to agendize it? Yeah, I think.
It may not be an issue that's susceptible to board discussion anyway. Maybe something that the Hart administration could do without board input. But I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
Yeah, let's check if we can agendize it. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 2/3 of the voting members.
Yeah, I think you can do it. There's a requirement of that the board has to state in writing the reasons for its finding that an unanticipated event has occurred and that an emergency meeting is necessary. So there may be some other requirements there, but you can do it.
Okay, we'll work on it, but you're staying on, and Anthony, right? Because we're going into executive session.
Yeah, and I'll text Nate.
Okay. Okay, so with that, can you do what we need to do? Natalie's gonna be off. I think everybody else who is not involved has left. But we need to keep our mics on, but make sure Olelo's off because Anthony can't hear us otherwise, right? Thank you. I must summarize what was discussed in executive session without, of course, waiving any of the privileges. So the executive session on agenda item number 14, which is the City and County of Honolulu acting by and through the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation versus Victoria Ward, civil number 18-1-1564-10 JMT. We received an update from one of the attorneys as to the status of this matter. As everyone is aware, this case was argued before the Hawaii Supreme Court, and we haven't had a decision yet, but we've been updated on anything subsequent to that and where our attorneys are and what the recommendations are. So with that, members, we are now going to look at agenda item number 15, which is Shimmick Taylor Granite JV or STG as we know them versus Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation. This is civil number 1CCV-23-0000876. And we will be going into executive session on this matter as well. I apologize that we're going in and out. However, we have no choice in the matter because we have different parties involved. So with that, I would need a motion from someone from the board. Wait. Okay, pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statute Section 92-4, Section 92-3A, and this is to deliberate concerning the authority of persons designated by the board to conduct labor negotiations or to negotiate the acquisition of public property or during the conduct of such negotiations, and subsection 92-5A4, which is to consult with the attorneys on questions and issues on a matter pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. I have a motion from Art Tolentino. Do I have a second on this? Second, and we have a second. I assume Natalie, we have discussion. Natalie, we have a discussion from you.
Yes, just the same comment as before. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So with that, do we have any other discussion? If not, do we have unanimous consent? We do. So members, we're going into executive session. Thank you. My apologies to Ilelo again, but
One.
Thank you. We're back. Though we would normally be adjourning, I am going to use chair's discretion and go back to agenda item 12.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
You need to do the summary of executive session.
Oh, sorry. I need to do first a summary on agenda item number 15, with this STG versus Hart, civil number 1CCV-23-123400876. So to comply with Sunshine, the summary is that we were briefed in executive session on the status of this lawsuit. Just for the public's knowledge, Hart has yet to be served on this matter, but we asked and got an update as to what led us to this point from our staff of Hart and council. Okay, so with that, we normally would adjourn at this point, but we're gonna go back to agenda item number 12B, which is action items review. As you know, we had the discussion. So just to be clear, is there anyone here who had requested an action item? Because this is something that we're going to have to make sure that's covered in the next meeting. Is there any member who asked for an action item or thinks of an action item that we'd like to have at least answered by the next board meeting? Anyone? Yes.
I think that it would be useful to have comments from item number, where is it? 7, the report of the permitted action group for the rules and policies. If any of the board members have comments to the rules and policies, they should review them and bring them, send them to Cindy so that we can bring them up at the next board meeting.
Okay, I think we would do that anyway, but yeah, fine. Any other action items? So we'll list it both as an action item and when we discuss it as an agenda item. Anyone else have any action items? No? Okay, thank you very much, members. So with that, we are going to be adjourned. Hearing no objections, thank you very much. This must be a record for an agenda that has 16 items. We actually are done before 1 o'clock. Thank you very much, members.
Aloha. Much, Anthony and Natalie. Thank you. Anthony, go get some sleep.
I will.